So in this video, I'll be sharing the different trade management systems that I've been testing for just under a year. And then I'll break down why I've selected the particular one I have. Some are for beginners, others are more advanced, but you could honestly select any one of them and achieve some level of success. My name is Samkelam Vega, and this is the Modern Day Trader channel. Even though I'll be sharing the data from my back testing, if you're still wondering why you should be listening to me, I've been trading the financial markets for the past 8 years and am currently a 6-figure funded trader. Marcy and I have created this channel to help traders just like yourself navigate the many challenges within this industry by sharing our transparent experience. So when I think about trade management, there's effectively two different groups of systems that you can use. One where you set your target area or your take profit using structure or buy or sell side liquidity, and the other group where you set a fixed R multiple as your target. So you could be targeting 2R or 3R. So within the first group, which I'd say is for beginners or more or less experienced traders, I've broken it down into either 2R or 3R target. And then within that, there's variation 1 and variation 2. So with 2R, you can see the half risk is applied at 1R, profit is taken at 2R. And then with variation 2, there's no half risk applied, profit is just taken at 2R. So there you just set your stop loss, your take profit, and you're either going to get taken out at full loss or at full profit. Of those two, 2R V1 is my current strategy. Well, current before I'm changing it now. And then looking at 3R, it's the same thing, V1, half risk at 1R, and then profit is taken at 3R. And then V2, no half risk, so no active management, set and forget type of thing. When you come onto, the group where you've set your target area using buy or sell side liquidity, I'd say this is more advanced because you are using more discretion. There's more active management, especially when it comes to trailing your stops. And although it's subjective, it's also guided by your own experience in the market, knowing when not to choke a position too much, knowing when you can give it a bit of room to breathe. And that only comes through time and experience. So again, if you are a bit newer, stick to a fixed 2R or 3R target. Let the market take you out when it gets there. Try as hard as possible not to actively manage the position. But that obviously comes with some of its downsides, and we'll chat about that when we get to the data. But within, I guess, the second more advanced group, there's the system 1, which sets the target area using 1 hour, 4-hour structure. And then the half risk method is applied at 2R. So you really let the trade run a bit before you reduce any risk. Break even is applied at 3R, and then you start to trail stops conservatively using the 15 or 1 hour structure. And then once the target area is achieved, price weighting is applied, which is basically very aggressively trailing your stops on the 15-minute. If you want to know what that's more about, check out Casper SMC. He's got a video on price weighting. System 2, which draws from the principles of system 1, but tries to be a bit more conservative in that approach. Target area of 3R is set, unless the 1 hour structure precedes this, I guess 1 hour or 4 hour, and this is greater than 2R. So let's say you're trading within a 1 hour range, and your low is at 2.6R. That will be your target area, because that's price normally targets those equal lows or equal highs. But if not, 3R is set, or if that equal low equal high is slightly less than 2R, I don't like taking a position where my risk to reward isn't at least 2R. So if it's lacking, then I'll just set 3R. Here the half risk method is applied at 1R. Break even is applied at 2R, and the stops are trailed conservatively using the 15-minute or 1 hour structure. And then once the target area is achieved, then price weighting is applied. So similar to the first one, but you're a bit more aggressive in your active management. And unlike only using, the 1 hour or 4 hour structure, this system 2 incorporates a mechanical aspect to it where you're ideally looking for 3R, but even though, that is your target area, you're still trailing stops. And then once it gets there, it's just more of an aggressive trail so that if price does continue to run aggressively, you're not capping that upside and you're letting that winner run. So when we get to, the data and how I actually tested the various systems, what I basically used was only the pairs where management was involved. So when I take a trade, I know there are one of 5 outcomes that are going to play out. It's either going to be a full loss, a partial loss, so I move to half risk and price stops me out. Break even, price stops you out at break even. It's going to be a partial win. I've set a trailing stop and price hasn't reached my target area, it stops me out, or it's going to be a full profit. And so with looking at optimizing or testing management strategies, it just makes sense to filter out the losses because no management was applied there anyway. And so that isn't so much a management thing, that may be more of a stop placement, tweak or whatever, but that wouldn't have added much value to, this data set. Obviously it would change, the return that you generate because you're filtering out all your losses. But it's still going to show you which system performs the best. And so when I'm looking at the data that I'm collecting, number, date, doesn't really matter. I guess pair as well. I've added that because you may start to notice some tendencies over time, whether it was long or short, the level of risk used, because obviously that determines the outcome of the position. That's been factored into the return that was ultimately generated. And then obviously separating my systems based on whether it was TP set using structure or TP set using the fixed R multiple. And so I think there may be some of you that are thinking that if you've got a solid strategy and you get a great entry, the traders over time, that same setup is going to play out. I think we really don't understand how important trade management is. If you just look at this example of this Euro USD position taken on the 25th of March, this just shows you how the outcome of a trade taken with the same strategy can play out in so many different ways, whether that's, break even, played out for 1.27%, played out for 1%, you lost 0.25%, or you lost, the full, 0.5%, just based on how you manage, the strategy. And that ultimately tells you that there are so many different things that can happen once a trade is executed. It's not guaranteed that because you've followed your rules and you've executed a position in a certain way that, it will ultimately play out to whatever your target area or TP is. And so when we look at, the total return, which again has, factored out the losses taken, these will obviously be much lower. You can see that there was a clear system which performed better than the others. That was the system 1, the one that was a lot more, conservative in my management, gave the trade more room to breathe. That is not the system that I've chosen. I've actually opted in this current revision. You can see, you obviously know what my current system is. I've opted to go for system 2 that kind of blends the conservative, leaving room to breathe, with the more mechanical aspects of setting a fixed 2R target. And I think that's ultimately because to some degree I know that the sequence of results will almost mimic a bell curve, if you will. There's going to be trades where you close out next to nothing. There's going to be trades where they reach full TP and you perform really, really well and you squeeze out the most that you can in a position. But most of your positions are probably going to fall within, the median of that range. And so I'm obviously not going to go for the system that doesn't perform well. I think there's a bit of hesitation with, the system that has performed really well. Partly also because if you go back, and I'll put it up on the screen, a phase where none of the systems were performing really well. Within there, the one that ultimately does do best at the end still endures kind of the longest losing streak or period where I'm taking consistent losses. You know, this is all black and white, this is on paper, but you have to think in real life. If you had to just be constantly taking loss after loss, how's that going to affect, you know, your approach to the market, your decision making? You also don't want to expose yourself to a system, yes, that may do really well compared to others. You know, what does it take to achieve, you know, that end goal? And will you be able to execute consistently? Because backtesting is one thing, but trading, you know, live markets is another. And I know that, you know, it's not going to be picture perfect when I get to the markets. And over time, this may not actually be the best performing strategy because it leaves a lot of, you know, money on the table and isn't very active in its management. So on paper, it looks good. Realistically, System 2 just incorporates the elements that, you know, I'm used to kind of executing and managing with, and those which I think I need to incorporate to be compliant with, you know, the Alpha Capital Rules Challenge, because that's not challenge, but the account, because that's ultimately why I'm going through this exercise. If you don't know why, go look at, you know, the daily nuggets from, you know, this past week, and you'll get a better understanding of, I guess, why we've gone through all of this. But then also just the element of management that allows me to capture more of that upside. So your ability to manage positions really well will ultimately determine your profitability over time. Now, if I look at the best performing management system versus, you know, the one that performed the worst, there's a deviation of about 13.5% there. You can honestly pass two phases with that. You can add an extra $200,000 or $400,000 of, you know, capital to your portfolio with that. It's money left on the table. You know, test these for yourself and come back and comment down below which system worked best for you, because it's going to vary. And it's going to vary because with some of the more advanced ones, there's an element of discretion use, and that's, you know, our own subjectivity. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this video if I've provided you with any value. Remember guys, consistency is the choice you make when you start doing the things you know you should be doing day in and day out.